it's Kirsten. Today's video is going to be hopefully short and sweet. I'm just going to give you guys a handful of tips and advice that you might want to keep in mind if you are going to be posting your artwork online. Whether you're a young artist who's just thinking of getting into social media, or you're someone who has been putting your stuff on social media but you feel like you're not getting the reactions or the engagement that you thought you were, and you're just kind of not sure what you're doing. These are some things that I've tried that have kind of worked for me, or that I know have worked for other people, that are just a couple of things to keep in mind while you are starting this journey of building an online audience. And to keep in mind, everyone's system is different. Everyone is going to find out what works well for them, and don't feel bad if things take a little bit of time to build traction. It takes a long time to build an organic following, and it doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It doesn't mean you're not a good artist. It just means everyone's on social media. It's a huge market to compete with, and it's a rough thing to break into. But here are a couple of things that might help you out a little bit. Also, different filming setup, and hopefully my dog doesn't get up in the middle of this. I'm still trying to figure out a good filming setup. So the very first thing you want to do if you're going to be putting your work online is figure out which platform works well for you. I personally use Instagram. I just really like it a lot. I think it's a really good place to meet people. I really like having kind of a profile that just has all my stuff in a grid. I think it's really straightforward. It's great for stuff that's picture-based. You might find that you want to make it really easy for people to share your work, so you might like something like Twitter or Tumblr where people can reblog or retweet or whatever. Or maybe you found that you really like the way the comment section works on Facebook, so you want to pursue Facebook. So look at the artists that you really like and that you want to emulate, see which platforms they're using and how they use it, and kind of make a decision about which ones you want to use and how much time you want to put into it. The next thing you really want to think about and put some time and consideration into is your username. Nowadays, being on social media as a creator or as an artist or anyone who has their own business, your username becomes a huge part of your brand. It's what people recognize you as. So you want to take some thought and time into creating your username, and you want to be consistent with it. So you don't want to have something that isn't a reflection of what you do, or that's really hard to search for, or really hard to spell, or is like really long. And you want to try to pick something that you know you can get on multiple platforms. I personally am Winklebeebee on all of my social media. It makes it really easy to direct people to all of my different pages because it's the same on all of them. So knowing that you've picked something that's representative of you, like your full name plus illustration or the art of whoever, is very straightforward. It's a very professional way to just say who you are and tie everything back to your own brand. You know, so if you're doing a page that's for illustrations or for music or for photography or whatever, you might want to represent that. Don't be like puppy and coffee lover 12344 or like trash can 24/7. Like, those aren't good usernames. They might be funny. Maybe you want to use that for a personal account. Don't use that for your professional account. Try to keep it representative of what you are and what you're doing. The next thing you're going to want to think about is what kind of content you're going to want to post on your page. Keep in mind, like, these are all suggestions. You're allowed to post whatever you want on any of your pages and any of your social media. But if you're trying to build a consistent following based off of your artwork or your content that you create, like the stuff that you make, you want to know that you're posting mostly just that. Like, you don't want to have a page that you say is your art page and have like one drawing and then like 4 pictures of like a salad and then like another drawing. Like, if you're going to be using this as a representation of the body of your work, keep it art related, or, you know, whatever related that you're doing. I'm gonna say art for the purpose of this video because that's what I do, but insert in music, photography, cooking, like whatever it is that you do. And keep it mostly that. And one of the reasons this is so important is nowadays when you are applying for jobs or for expos or conventions or whatever, it is completely not unusual for those people to ask for links to your social media because they want to see what you do, they want to see how many followers you have, and they want to see how well you represent yourself. So if you tell someone, I want to work for your company as an illustrator, and they ask for your Instagram, and your Instagram is all pictures of your dog, like, they might like your dog, but you're probably not going to get that job because that's not a representation of your stuff. If you want to post personal things, like I said, you're totally allowed to, but you might want to consider having a separate personal account. I do. It's where I post most of my personal stuff, or save that for your stories because they're not permanent. And keep your feed itself and your grid or your page, like whatever you have. Again, I'm referencing Instagram, but like your Facebook or Tumblr or Twitter or whatever, keep it relatively consistent. It makes it easier for people to find your work and to stick around to continue to see it because it's a representation of what you're doing. Hopefully there wasn't a weird angle change there because I just had to change the battery in my camera. Cool. Next thing you want to think about in terms of what you're posting is try to have things that are aesthetically pleasing. And I get that talking about things like Instagram and Tumblr aesthetic sounds really ridiculous to say out loud, but it is a real thing. Having things that look aesthetically pleasing are what make people come to your page and makes them stay because they want to keep seeing content like that. It is really simple and really easy to put together a cute filming or like photography setup for really inexpensive when you're starting and using that for all of your pictures. For example, if it's your vibe and you want to do this, you can go to like Lowe's or Michael's and buy just like a plank of wood for really cheap, for like 10 bucks. Go pick up like a handful of fake flowers and then pick whatever accessories, accoutrements, like whatever you want to put, crystals, tarot cards, buttons, whatever, and have those kind of scattered around the edge, and then put it next to a window to get some natural light and just use that to take your picture of your product every single time. Your feed is going to look consistent, it's going to look clean. Find a thing that works for you and just stick with it. You don't have to put together these crazy photo shoots every time you want to post something. And it doesn't have to be like something that's super complicated to put together. You can have that and leave it next to your window and just go put your sketchbook down and shoot it every single time you want to take a picture. Obviously, again, this is just advice. I clearly don't do this on my Instagram page. I've just been posting what I have been for so long that it feels weird to suddenly be like curating a backdrop. But as someone who knows a lot of people with really successful pages, I can tell you that that goes a really long way. The next thing, everyone always asks about this, and I feel like a lot of people don't know how to use it correctly, but learning how to use hashtags. Hashtags are really, really important. They're essentially the way for people to search for your content. So because they are a searchable term, you want to find the good middle ground of which hashtags to use. If you're posting something and you use a super vague hashtag, it is not doing you any favors, because if you go on Instagram and you tag one of your drawings as just art, there are, I don't know how many tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of pictures that are tagged that on Instagram. Your stuff is never going to show up in that search because it's going to get buried. There's way too much stuff with that. But if you tag something as, you know, Kirsten Winkelbauer does a drawing, that is way too specific of a hashtag, and again, no one is going to think to search for that. So you want to kind of find stuff that is a little more specific to what you're doing without being crazy specific. So if you're doing like a watercolor painting, instead of just putting paint, put watercolor illustration. You're still gonna get thousands of drawings with that hashtag, but it's far less than the super vague one. It's more likely that it's gonna hang around kind of towards the top of those tags long enough for people to notice it. But the really cool thing about Instagram is when you start to type in a tag, like when you're putting a post together, it'll pop up suggestions, and next to those hashtags, it will say how many posts have that tag. So if you try to tag something and it already has 10 million pictures there, don't use that one. Find something that's a little bit more specific and just use that as a gauge for whether or not you think that tag would work for you. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's a really useful tool. And a lot of times if that tag is useful on somewhere like Instagram, it's probably useful on other social media platforms as well. So be thoughtful about them, and maybe don't use, 50 hashtags for each piece. Maybe somewhere around 10 to 15 works. All right, so thus far, everything in this video has just been suggestions. It's been advice for stuff that's either worked for me or worked for other people. It is not a definitive guide for anything. It is just some stuff to keep in mind. But if you are going to take anything from this video, take away these last couple of things I'm going to talk about, because I don't think they're just suggestions. I think they're something that every single creator should do if they're going to be online. The number one thing in terms of protecting your artwork, please put your name or watermark your work before you put it on the internet. It drives me crazy how many people post these beautiful, beautiful drawings online with their name nowhere on it, and that it gets reblogged or shared or sent somewhere else without the link going back to them, and then suddenly no one knows who did that drawing. And I understand that a lot of people like to have this kind of like really pretty composed picture, and throwing a watermark or your name on it kind of ruins that. But the whole purpose of having that beautifully curated picture is to get people to look at it and like it, and if they share it and it can't get tied back to you, then it wasn't for anything anyways. And I know some people will just put their name like in the bottom corner of the picture, and like so it doesn't like ruin the main content of the image. But just keep in mind, as your following grows, when you put your watermark or your name like in the bottom corner or like somewhere like kind of like really far at the edges, you're basically asking for someone to crop it out or Photoshop it out and reuse it anyways. I hate to say that because it's a huge bummer, but there are people whose like entire thing on the internet is taking other people's work to curate their fancy aesthetic feeds or to share it in other places and take credit for it. It's a huge bummer, but it's part of the social media we've created. So please just protect your artwork. There are 1,000,001 photo apps that have a text option, so you can just put your username and put it somewhere on your photo. I will list a couple here that you might like. I personally use one called A Beautiful Mess. I really like it because there is an opacity option on the text, so I can put my name on something and then lower the opacity so it looks more like a watermark and it's not my name just like in the middle of the picture. But please do that. And on the second note of protecting your artwork, unless you can think of a really good reason to, please do not upload super high resolution photos of your artwork on the internet, at least not without a fat watermark across it, because I guarantee you, as you build an audience and as your work improves and you have people who really like your work, if you post a high resolution photo somewhere or high resolution file somewhere, people will take that and they will use it for something that you don't want them to use it for at some point. It happens all the time. It sucks. But a lot of people who have been in the industry for a little while, who have been online for a while, know this. There are endless websites where people just rip off other people's artwork and sell it on t-shirts and tote bags on these cheap websites. So please don't make it easier for them. Watermark your stuff, keep it pretty low resolution, and that's specifically mostly for like your portfolio website. Like you can't really post high res on Instagram or anything, but if you're posting your stuff online anywhere and you can choose like how big the file is, keep it relatively small. You can do some research on the sizes that work best, but just don't have it be high resolution. Please don't hand your stuff to people who will abuse it. Like just protect your work because you want it to be tied back to you. You do want to build that audience, but you don't want to do it in a way that makes it easy for people to take your hard work away from you. So please just keep that in mind. And the number one thing that I personally think every single person should do and mentally prepare themselves for social media and being on the internet is you have to build a thick skin. And I hate saying that. I really hate saying that. It sucks really bad. And it also feels really bad to say that because I'm still learning to do that even after all these years. But building a thick skin and knowing when to let go of certain stuff, because the thing is, the internet is great. Social media is great for a lot of things. I have met a ton of people. I have a lot of followers who completely support me and give me like the most encouraging words and like the most supportive network, and I honestly don't think I would still be doing what I'm doing if I didn't have it. But we are all aware of the fact, this is not new information, that the internet that we have created has a whole subset of people who are basically trolls. There are people who thrive off messing with other people, or who are just mean or give their completely unasked for advice or just completely unasked for criticisms, and will go out of your way to be mean sometimes because that's just what they do. They have troll accounts or spam accounts or repost accounts, or they just have simply forgotten that as they're hiding behind their screen, on the other side of it is a real living and breathing human being who is just trying to make a living and do something that they really care about. And so because those people exist and there's no way for us to get rid of them, we have to learn to let things go and to realize that anything that these people say to you online that's negative is a reflection of them and not of you. There's going to be someone who says they don't like your work. There's going to be someone who says something in your work can be improved, and they're not going to be nice about it sometimes. And that sucks. It feels really terrible for people to tell you they don't like your work or that you're doing something badly in their opinion. But the reality is that's some random person, and your work is what you do for yourself. And you know, you're probably not trying to impress that one specific person, and it's really easy to want to fall in and like defend yourself or respond to them or message them or like whatever. It's not worth it. It's usually not worth it. I will fully admit that, and I've in the past called people out publicly that I'm not super proud of because it wasn't worth it. Like there are people who are just trying to get a rise out of you, or they're just trying to take advantage of your work. And I'm not saying you shouldn't defend your work in some degrees, like if someone's ripping off your work or reposting it without asking or copying or whatever, like obviously report them. Like you should report that because there are community guidelines on all social media for that. But like it's not worth having a huge message back and forth with them or calling them out publicly or anything like that. Like it's not worth the fight because there's always going to be someone, and it's exhausting and it's frustrating, but it's exhausting and it's not worth it because there's so much positive you can get out of social media that I think it's more important to focus on that than to try to stop every single person who's going to go out there being like a total dickhead. I'll probably bleep that out because that I'm trying to stay like language appropriate, but like people suck sometimes. Not everyone, like I said, there's some great people that I've met, and for every one of those like total jerks who ends up like marring your page for a split second, there's 100 other people who will support you and lift you up and make you feel better about what you're doing, and those are the people you should be working to build relationships with and impress and talk to. So just know that I want the internet to be a better place than it is, and I think that's a little bit easier to do if you don't let the crappy people on the fringes kind of invade like your main experience with it. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're younger, especially if you're new to all of this. Don't let other people's completely unasked for opinions ruin things for you. Because they kind of suck if they do. They're trying to make you feel bad. Those people suck. So that's it for today. Hopefully, man, that was still like longer than I wanted it to be. I even had like a short and concise list being like, I'm just gonna list this off and be a short video for once. I started talking in my big old mouth. But I think that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that was helpful to some of you. Please, if you guys have any advice for stuff that has worked or not worked for you, please put that in the comments. Like, I want more people to know about that. And if you have anything else you want to see in a video in the future, please go ahead and put that in the comments as well. I will do my best to make it happen. And until my next video, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye!